The town of Willow Ridge woke gently each morning, as if it too needed a slow exhale before stepping into the day. Tucked between gentle hills and framed by sun-drenched wildflower fields, it was the kind of place where people still waved from porches and coffee tasted like memories. For Noah Bennett, it was home familiar, predictable, and quiet. He liked it that way. After all the noise life had once thrown at him, silence had become his most faithful companion. Every morning, he opened the little bookstore he inherited from his grandfather, Bennett and Page's, at precisely 8 a.m. The bell above the door chimed a soft, antique greeting the same way it had for decades. Noah would brew a fresh pot of coffee, flip the open sign, and lose himself in the comfort of old books and handwritten inventory lists. He didn't expect much to change. And honestly, he preferred it that way, until she walked in, It was the kind of entrance that felt unplanned, yet perfectly timed. The sun had just risen high enough to paint the hardwood floors with golden streaks when the door opened, the bell ringing like a soft question mark. And stepped a woman carrying a camera slung across her shoulder, a scarf the color of autumn wrapped loosely around her neck, and eyes that immediately scanned the space like she was searching for something she'd only ever seen in dreams. Name was Clara Emerson. She looked like she had stories in her pockets and poetry tucked behind her ears. "Is this place as magical as it smells?" she asked, inhaling the scent of aged paper and brewed coffee. Noah looked up from behind the counter, slightly startled by both the question and the person who asked it. "That depends," he said, setting his mug down. "Do you believe in magic?" Clara smiled, the kind of smile that crept in slowly, as if it didn't want to rush a good moment. Only the kind that sneaks up on you in unexpected places. Something about her presence tilted the room. She didn't just enter. The bookstore she arrived as if she were a line in a book Noah hadn't read yet, but instantly knew would become his favorite. Her warmth, curiosity, and quiet energy folded perfectly into the soft corners of the room. "I'm Clara. By the way," she added, offering her hand. "Noah," he replied, shaking it. Her hand was cool from the early morning breeze, but her touch lingered. Like an echo of sunlight. She wandered through the aisles like someone looking for a piece of herself between the spines of novels. Her fingers brushed the edges of poetry collections, travel memoirs, and photography guides. She finally stopped at a weathered copy of Leaves of Grass. "You always live here?" she asked, not looking up. "All my life," Noah said. "You just passing through?" Clara tilted her head. "Maybe, or maybe I'm just arriving." It wasn't the kind of flirtation that made you blush. It was deeper, like two puzzle pieces clicking into place. There was something about her that felt like the sunrise, quiet, steady, inevitable. As she walked back to the counter with the book in hand, she paused by the window, watching the morning light spill across the shelves. You ever notice how books catch light differently? Like they remember every hand that's ever held them? Noah studied her, fascinated not just by what she said, but how she saw the world. It had been a long time since someone's words made him stop mid-thought. "You a writer?" he asked. "Photographer," Clara answered. "But stories live in photographs, too. You just have to know where to look." Their conversation stretched, unhurried, like it had always been meant to happen. Noah poured her a cup of coffee, and they talked about favorite books, quiet towns, and the way some people seem to belong in certain moments, like they were always meant to be there. When she finally stepped out, the bell above the door chimed again, softer this time, like it knew it had just witnessed something begin. Noah watched her walk down the street, her camera catching glimpses of old brick buildings and flower pots. He didn't know where she'd come from or how long she would stay, but something told him, deep in the part of his heart he hadn't visited in years, that Clara Emerson had just rewritten the first chapter of his carefully quiet life, and he wasn't sure he wanted to turn the page back. The days that followed Clara's arrival were like watercolor soft edges, delicate transitions, and moments that lingered just long enough to leave a trace. Clara Emerson didn't just pass through Willow Ridge like a tourist. She blended, like she'd been painted into its rhythm. She rented a room above an old flower shop owned by a widow named Mrs. Langley, who still arranged roses like they were love letters. Clara spent her mornings taking long walks with her camera and her evenings sipping tea on the little balcony outside her room, where the scent of lavender drifted up from the shop below dock. She was the kind of woman who noticed everything. The chipped paint on the lampposts, the way the wind rustled the curtains in the diner, the stories etched in people's expressions. It made her photographs not just beautiful, but alive. She captured emotion, not just faces. Depth, not just light. Noah noticed her the same way Dot at first. He convinced himself it was just curiosity. She was new, interesting, unusual, but the truth ran deeper. Clara felt like a whisper of something he had forgotten how to miss. Noah Bennett, on the other hand, was a man who had built a quiet life from the fragments of a storm. Years ago, he'd been engaged. Her name was Hannah. She had a laugh that could mend broken things and a heart too wild for small towns. She'd left after the accident, one that didn't take Noah's life, but took his faith in happy endings. Since then, he had stopped hoping for surprises. He found comfort in patterns: open the shop, shelve the books, brew the coffee, keep your heart guarded. But Clara unsettled that rhythm with her gentle chaos. She'd come into the shop most mornings now, sometimes to buy a book, sometimes to talk, and sometimes just to sit in the window seat and watch the light shift across the floorboards. Noah pretended not to notice how her presence brightened the place, but he always brewed an extra cup. One afternoon, as rain whispered against the window panes, Clara curled up in the reading nook with a photography book. She was barefoot, her boots left by the door, and the ends of her jeans slightly damp. Noah watched from behind the counter, unable to stop the growing ache in his chest, the kind that only came when you started caring. "You always look like you're thinking in poems," he finally said. Clara looked up and grinned. "Maybe I am. Maybe I'm just trying to live one." That became a pattern. They spoke in half-thoughts and full hearts. He told her about the bookstore, how his grandfather started it with just a crate of books and a dream. How it became a home for people searching for more than just stories. She told him about growing up, moving place to place, never knowing what home meant, only what it felt like. "Maybe that's why I take pictures," Clara once said, her voice soft. "It's the only way I know how to keep something before it disappears." Noah didn't have a response to that. Not right away, because her words felt too much like his truth. One Sunday, she invited him to walk with her through Willow Ridge's nature trail. The air was crisp, filled with the scent of pine and old leaves. They strolled in silence, their steps falling in rhythm. She paused, often photographing wild mushrooms, a crooked tree, the delicate bend of a daisy. Noah never rushed her. He simply walked beside her, grateful for a kind of peace he hadn't felt in years. "You're quiet," she said after a while. "I always am," he replied. "Not when you talk about books. Or your grandfather. Or me." Noah stopped walking. Clara didn't turn. She kept her eyes on a patch of sunlight breaking through the trees. "You notice everything," he said. She smiled. "Only what matters." He didn't say anything else, but when their hands brushed a few minutes later, neither of them moved away. That was the beginning of the shift. Not sudden, not loud. Just a soft turn toward something neither of them had planned. A trust, a comfort, an awareness. Clara started showing him her photos. He was stunned by how much feeling they carried. A little girl chasing bubbles, an old man holding a wrinkled letter, a stray dog looking up at a full moon. She didn't just photograph scenes, she captured the soul of them, One evening, as golden hour wrapped the town in soft light, Clara brought Noah a framed photograph. "This is for you," she said, placing it in his hands. He looked at it. It was the bookstore, taken from across the street, but the magic wasn't in the subject. It was in the light, the way it poured through the windows, making the shop glow like a memory you wanted to keep forever. "It looks like hope," he whispered. "That's what I see when I look at you," she said quietly. Hope that stayed. He didn't know what to say. So he said nothing. But that night, he put the photo above the counter, where the morning sun would always hit it. Their connection deepened not in declarations, but in everyday moments. She helped him restock books. He brought her coffee on chilly mornings. She taught him how to see light differently. He taught her how to slow down and be. The world of Willow Ridge, its cobblestone paths, ivy-covered fences, local farmers market, an old tradition served as the quiet stage where their story grew. Neighbors started noticing. Mrs. Langley would wink when Clara mentioned Noah. The diner owner offered them pie on the house if they came together, but still, neither of them said what their hearts already knew, that somehow, in the softest and most unexpected way, love had started writing its name into both of their lives. What neither of them knew, though, was that love, even when gentle, can be followed by fear. That sometimes hearts hesitate right when they should leap. That people like Clara carry more than just cameras, they carry wounds, and Clara was about to remember the one she hadn't healed yet. Over the next few weeks, Ryan found himself seeking out excuses to visit the library more often. A book on community planning here, a historical reference there, anything that gave him a reason to linger near Ice's desk. He told himself it was research, but deep down, he knew it had little to do with maps and everything to do with her presence. Aisha, though quietly observant, noticed the pattern. Ryan wasn't the only one becoming more aware. Every time he entered the room, something in her shifted. His voice, calm and deep, carried a warmth that made her shoulders ease no matter how long her shift had been. He listened when she spoke not, out of politeness, but like every word she offered was a thread he didn't want to lose. She couldn't remember the last time someone made her feel seen like that. One Tuesday afternoon, he caught her shelving books in the local history section. Her ponytail swayed as she hummed under her breath, a soft tune from a movie she barely remembered. Ryan paused near the aisle, not wanting to interrupt the serenity of the moment. She turned surprised, her eyes wide, then relaxed when she saw him. "You scared me," she laughed, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Sorry," he said, his hands raised in defense. "I didn't mean to sneak up on you. I was just ... Drawn in by your humming." Aisha tilted her head. "You recognize the tune?" "Not at all," he admitted, grinning, "but it was nice, peaceful." Their laughter echoed softly between the bookshelves. That day, he helped her carry some books down from a high shelf, and their hands brushed, just a fleeting touch, but it sent a surprising spark through both of them. Aisha's heart skipped. She pulled back quickly, embarrassed by her reaction, but Rayan just smiled, a quiet understanding in his eyes that made her feel less awkward. Their friendship unfolded like a gentle sunrise. Each conversation revealed more. Rayan told her about the school program he was helping design for underprivileged kids, and Aisha opened up about the grief that led her back to this town. She told him how losing her father had made the world feel unsteady, how books and quietness became her anchors in the storm. Sometimes, she whispered one evening as they walked through the park near the library after closing hours, "I feel like I don't belong anywhere anymore. Like the life I was building in the city just ... evaporated." Rayan didn't rush to fill the silence. Instead, he stopped walking, turned to her gently, and said, "Maybe you were meant to find something different. Maybe your belonging isn't in a place, it's in people." Aisha looked at him then, something flickering behind her eyes. And you? She asked. Where do you belong? He smiled, slow and genuine. I used to think I had it all figured out. Big city plans, fancy offices. But lately, he glanced up at the stars just beginning to appear above them. Lately, I think belonging feels more like this, quiet. Honest, like standing here with you. Her breath caught in her chest. They didn't touch. Didn't move closer, but the air between them pulsed with something that wasn't there before. Not quite love, not yet, but a powerful pull, undeniable and true. One Saturday, the library held a children's story event, and Rayon offered to help. Watching him read aloud, voices animated and facial expressions exaggerated, made Aisha laugh so hard she had to hide behind the counter. The kids adored him, but more than that, she did too, in a way she hadn't let herself feel in a long time. Later, as they packed up, he caught her watching him. What? He asked, smiling. Nothing, she said quickly, cheeks pink. Just, you're really good with them, with people. Maybe it's because I finally stopped trying to impress everyone, he said, walking closer, and just started showing up for the right ones. Their eyes met again, this time longer, this time deeper. Aisha could feel it, the tension, sweet and trembling, like a held breath. Her fingers edged to reach for his, but she didn't. She couldn't. Not yet. That night. Rayon sat in his apartment with a cold cup of tea and the memory of her laughter echoing in his ears. He stared at his phone, wondering if he should message her. Just something simple. Something to say, you're on my mind. Before he could talk himself out of it, a message from her came through. Thank you for today. It meant more than you know. He smiled at the screen, heart full, and typed back, anytime. You make this place feel more like home. The first snowfall arrived quietly, coating the town in a soft, glistening blanket. Amelia had always loved this time of year, when the world seemed to pause and take a breath. The streets looked like something out of a snow globe, and the cafe had taken on a magical charm with twinkling lights, warm drinks, and the scent of cinnamon in the air. But this year, it wasn't just the season that made her heart feel full. It was Ethan Dot. Their connection had grown like ivy, slowly and surely wrapping itself around the quiet corners of their lives. They spent their mornings together at the cafe, exchanging stories over steaming mugs of coffee. Amelia shared how she used to sneak out during thunderstorms as a child just to feel the rain. Ethan told her about the lake house he hadn't visited since his dad passed, and how he still remembered the creaking floorboards and the scent of pine wood. These weren't just conversations, they were exchanges of pieces of themselves, willingly given one evening as snowflakes began to drift. Lazily outside the window, Ethan arrived at the cafe holding something behind his back. Amelia looked up from behind the counter and smiled. You're late. I was picking this up, he said, revealing a small snow globe. Inside was a miniature version of a cozy cabin, surrounded by tiny trees dusted with white. It reminded me of the stories you told me, about how you always dreamed of spending a winter in a quiet cabin with books, music, and someone who made the silence feel like home. Her heart fluttered at the thought. You remember that? I remember everything you say, Amelia, he said softly. They stood in silence, the kind that wasn't awkward or empty, but full of meaning, of unsaid feelings, of warmth. That night, he walked her home, crunching through the snow under the streetlights. Her gloved hand brushed his, and instead of pulling away, she let her fingers stay there, linked with his. Their first real date wasn't grand or elaborate. It was a simple dinner at her place. She cooked, nervous that he might not like her food. But he loved every bite and told her she could open a second cafe just for dinners. They played vinyl records on her old player, slow dancing in the middle of her tiny living room, laughter and affection weaving into the dim light. Why are you looking at me like that? she asked as they danced, because this feels like something I've waited my whole life for, he whispered Dot in that moment. Amelia realized how safe she felt with him, not just physically, but emotionally. Like she could hand him every piece of her heart and he'd hold it gently. Days turned into weeks. And with every shared coffee, every quiet walk, and every stargazing session on her balcony, their bond deepened. Amelia found herself leaning into Ethan in ways she hadn't with anyone before. She told him about the scar on her wrist, the one she got when she fell from her bike as a kid, and how no one noticed for hours. She shared how being invisible sometimes made her question her worth. Ethan's response was simple yet powerful. He took her hand, traced the scar with his thumb, and said, "You were never invisible, not to the people who mattered, and certainly not to me." Ethan opened up too. He talked about the guilt he carried after his father's passing, the regrets, the unresolved conversations, the things left unsaid. One snowy evening, she found him sitting alone outside the cafe, lost in thought. "You okay?" she asked gently, kneeling beside him. "I didn't get to say goodbye," he murmured. "I thought there'd be more time, and I've carried that with me every day." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Then let this be the day you start forgetting yourself." Their emotional intimacy wasn't built on grand declarations, but in the quiet moments of truth, honesty, and shared vulnerability. Amelia would leave little notes in his coat pocket, quotes, jokes, or just the thinking of you. He'd bring her favorite pastries without being asked. Even when the cafe had already closed out one weekend, he surprised her with a visit to a frozen lake just outside town. The cabin nearby had been decorated with string lights, and a soft fire flickered inside. "It's not the same lake house from my childhood," he admitted, "but I wanted to create a new memory. With you." They spent the evening inside, wrapped in blankets, reading aloud from their favorite books, laughing, dozing off to the sound of crackling wood. It was everything Amelia had ever dreamed of and more. She hadn't just found someone who loved her. She had found someone who saw her completely. "I don't know where this is going," she said one night, her voice barely above a whisper, as they watched the snow fall through the window. "I do," Ethan said. "It's going somewhere good, somewhere lasting." And in that moment, with snow falling softly and hearts open wide, neither of them needed a map. They had found something rare, something real. They had found each other. The days that followed were painted with affection, small glances across rooms, casual touches that lingered, evenings spent wrapped in shared laughter. But as much as the warmth of new love settled around them like sunlight, storm clouds quietly began to gather in the distance. Lena's art gallery had finally drawn the attention of a prestigious collective in New York. It was the kind of opportunity that came once in a lifetime, a solo showcase, a full year's patronage, and enough recognition to launch her onto the national scene. She'd submitted her portfolio months before she'd even met Kian, never expecting to be chosen. But now, here it was, everything she'd dreamed of, and the catch. She'd have to relocate to New York in less than 2 months. She hadn't told Kian yet. Every time she tried, the words caught in her throat. Their relationship had bloomed so naturally that she hadn't stopped to ask where it was headed or what it could withstand. He made her feel rooted, grounded. And yet, this dream, the one she carried since she was 16, was calling her elsewhere. Meanwhile, Kian was facing a storm of his own. His family's old vineyard, his father's legacy, had just come under threat. A real estate developer had offered to buy the land surrounding it, which would all but destroy the quiet beauty and environmental balance of the place. His younger sister, Myra, who handled most of the business side, urged him to consider selling parts of it to keep the rest afloat. But for Can, letting go of any part of that soil felt like betraying his father's memory. He started spending longer hours at the vineyard, often missing their usual evening walks or Sunday morning breakfasts at the cafe. Lena noticed, of course, and each missed moment began to whisper doubts into the corners of her heart. One crisp October evening, they met at the lake, their usual spot. The light danced off the water, but neither of them saw it. Lena sat on the bench, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Kian leaned against the railing, staring out. "I got the offer," she said, voice almost too soft to carry. He turned, eyes narrowing slightly. "What offer?" She forced a smile. "The New York Gallery, solo exhibition, full backing. It's everything I ever wanted." There was a pause, long and brittle. "That's amazing," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. She stood slowly. "Is it? You don't sound thrilled." "I am," he said, then ran a hand through his hair. "I just didn't realize we were on a deadline." "I didn't either," she replied quietly. "But it's happening, and I need to decide." Kian looked at her like she was already a memory. "So you're leaving?" "I don't know," she whispered. "That's why I'm telling you. I need to know where we stand." "What this is?" He turned away, shoulders stiff. "You know I can't leave, not with everything going on here." "I'm not asking you to," she said, trying to keep her voice calm, "but I need to know if this us is worth fighting for." He looked back, eyes tired. "What do you want me to say, Lena?" "That I'll ask you to stay. Give up your dream?" "No," she said, voice cracking. "I want you to fight for me." "And if I do," he asked, stepping closer, "will you stay? Or will you always wonder what could have been?" Her silence answered for her. The space between them widened, filled with unspoken fears and sacrifices neither was ready to make. That night, they parted without a kiss, without a promise, without even a proper goodbye. In the following days, they tried to pretend everything was fine. Lena immersed herself in preparations for the gallery, convincing herself she could balance both love and ambition. Kian retreated into the vineyard, pouring his frustration into soil and vines, letting his heartbreak ferment like the barrels in the cellar. Autumn faded to early winter. The town buzzed with upcoming holiday preparations, but for Lena and Kian, the warmth had turned to frost. Lena's best friend Audrey noticed first. "You're not happy," she said one night over wine. "You got what you wanted, but you look like you're about to cry every 5 minutes." "I miss him," Lena confessed. "But I don't want to choose between him and my future." "Then don't," Audrey said. "Tell him that. Give him the choice too." But Kian was struggling with his own internal war. Every part of him wanted to run after Lena, to beg her to stay, to build a life together. But he also knew the weight of giving up dreams. He had done it once when his father died, given up architecture school to take over the vineyard. He had no right to ask Lena to do the same. The tension peaked when Lena's farewell exhibition invitation arrived in the mail, gold embossed, beautiful and painfully real. She sat in her studio for hours, staring at it. She picked up her phone and dialed Kian's number, then hung up before it could ring. Again and again, he never called. The silence between them was louder than any argument could have been. They had love, real, tender, aching love, that life had placed two roads before them, and neither could see a way to merge them without losing something they couldn't afford to give. And so, as December snow began to fall, Lena made a choice, not because she didn't love him, but because she didn't know if love was enough to make them both stay. She packed her bags. The exhibition was 2 weeks away, and her heart had never felt heavier. The silence between them was deafening. Standing outside Ava's art gallery, silhouetted by the golden evening sun, Elias stared at the locked glass doors. The closed sign stared back at him, cruel in its simplicity. His heart pounded as he raised a trembling hand and knocked softly, uncertain if she would even come. Moments passed. Then the curtain at the side window moved. And there she was, Ava's eyes locked with his hesitant, hurt but not unkind. She slowly walked to the door and opened it just slightly, enough for his voice to reach her, but not enough for him to step in. "I didn't mean to leave things like that," Elias said, his voice cracking, but I panicked. I've always thought love was something that happened to other people, something temporary, something fragile, and you made it feel real, too real. Ava's expression was unreadable. "So you ran." "I did," he admitted, shame weighing every word. "Because you matter, and that terrified me." The air between them thickened with everything unsaid. Ava stepped outside now, folding her arms to guard herself from more than just the wind. "Ask me once," she began, "what I paint when I'm scared. Do you remember?" He nodded, heart in his throat. "I paint light," she said softly, "because light always returns, no matter how dark things get." "But you were my light, Elias, and when you left, I felt like I'd lost my sunrise." He stepped closer, barely inches away, but not touching her. "I never wanted to be the reason you dimmed. I was scared of needing you, of being seen. But when I walked away, I realized something." She looked up at him, eyes glassy. "What?" "That the scariest thing wasn't loving you." It was. The thought of never holding your hand again, never hearing your laugh, never being part of the world you make so beautiful. Her breath caught. "Why didn't you say this before?" "Because I didn't know how," he whispered. "But now, I do. I love you, Ava. I love the way you see beauty where others see broken. I love the way you listen like every word matters. And I love the way you looked at me like I was worth loving before I ever believed it myself." Ava's guard faltered, her arms slowly dropping to her sides. Her lips parted, but no words came. Just tears, soft, silent, and shining. "I don't expect it to be easy," Elias continued, "but I'll show up. Every day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." She took a deep, trembling breath. "I wanted to hate you for walking away. You had every right, but the truth is..." She stepped forward now, placing a trembling hand on his chest. "I never stopped hoping you'd walk back in." In. One heartbeat, the distance between them dissolved. He pulled her into his arms with a gentleness that spoke of all his regret, all his longing, and all his love. She clung to him like someone who had been holding their breath for far too long, and in that embrace wrapped in each other, in forgiveness, in truth, they both finally exhaled. There were no perfect words, no dramatic declarations beyond what had already been said. Just the thrum of two hearts that had finally found their rhythm. A love not born of ease, but of choice, of vulnerability, of rising even after falling. As the sun dipped behind the buildings, casting the sky in soft shades of rose and gold, it felt like the world was whispering that some love stories don't end with a bang, but with a breakthrough. And in that golden hour, Ava and Elias chose each other again, not just for now, but for always. A year later, the gallery was humming with quiet energy. It wasn't a grand event, no velvet ropes or long guest lists. Just family, friends, and townsfolk gathered to celebrate. The opening of Ava's new exhibit titled "The Light We Choose." The walls were adorned with pieces that pulsed with warmth, golden hues, silhouettes dancing in dawn. The quiet stillness of two figures holding hands under a sky slowly waking. To light. Elias stood in the corner watching her. Not from afar like he used to, but close enough to catch every expression as she laughed with guests, pointed to her work, and glowed with the quiet pride of someone who had walked through pain and made something beautiful from it. She caught his eye, and in that instant the room seemed to soften. She walked over to him and looped her fingers through his. "You still nervous around art?" She teased softly. He grinned. "Less than I used to be." Probably because the artist makes it easier. They stood in front of one of her most talked about paintings. It was of a sunrise, but unlike any other, a blend of soft golds and stormy blues, of chaos, giving way to clarity. And at the center, two figures, not fully painted, as if still forming, still becoming together. Elias cleared his throat. I still remember the first time you asked me what I was afraid of. Ava leaned into him. And I remember the first time you didn't lie about the answer. He smiled, squeezing her hand. I was afraid of being known, of being needed, but now he turned to her fully. Now I wake up every morning and thank the stars that you walked into my life like a sunrise. You didn't just bring light, you taught me how to carry it. A soft gasp came from the crowd as an elderly woman nearby noticed something on Ava's hand. Oh my, is that what I think it is? She asked, eyes twinkling. Ava held up her hand with a quiet smile, revealing the delicate ring Elias had given her the week before, not with a big speech or spectacle, but in the quiet of their kitchen, surrounded by canvas-stained mugs and a playlist that only the two of them liked. It is, Ava said simply, happiness radiating from her. But it's not just a ring. It's a reminder that sometimes the most beautiful stories begin after the broken parts. That love isn't always loud. Sometimes it's soft and steady. Like light, Elias slipped an arm around her waist. Like you. Later that evening, they sat on the gallery rooftop, a cozy space lit with string lights and wrapped in the hum of summer air. The stars blinked overhead, and Ava rested her head on Elias's shoulder. Do you ever think about how close we were to missing this? She asked quietly. All the time, he said. And every time I do, I hold you a little tighter. She turned to look at him, a soft smile on her lips. You know, people say love is like a fire, intense, burning, but I don't think that's us. No? He asked Dot. She shook her head. No, I think we're like the morning sun. We rise slowly, but once we're up, we stay. He kissed her forehead, his voice low. Then here's to every morning with you. The city lights sparkled below them, but neither noticed. Their world was wrapped in something deeper than time and brighter than light, and as the night held them in its arms, they didn't need promises or perfect words. Just each other, Dot, always.